Hey everybody, welcome to the 36th episode of Let's Talk With the Podcast. This is our long-awaited Season 3 finale, which is going like about a year or two. But today we are joined by Amanda Poldark Cosplay. Hi Amanda.
Hi!
And we did like essentially like a good geek wrap-up or general wrap-up of 2016, would you say? Or mixture?
It's a mixture of that. Also to just wrap up within my own fandoms, because two of my fandoms were sort of like big topics in 2016. Doctor Who finally came off of hiatus, which is exciting. Hamilton is also a huge geek topic, and then I just throw in some, things about conventions and cosplay life and goings on. I'm glad to be back on the show, because technically my first episode never aired. But hey, there's always a first time for everything.
Actually, this is your first one. We did the Doctor Who season 9 thing. That one.
Oh, season 9 did. I think the other one didn't.
Yeah, the other one didn't.
It's been a long time. I mean, it's been time, but it's okay.
What's the Doctor Timey-Wimey stuff that thing happened?
Yeah, exactly. Timey-Wimey things.
Yeah, so your other one, it exists, and then I just got behind. That's a long story, but yeah. Anyway, thank you for being on the episode, first of all, and
thank you.
Thanks to everybody for listening and keeping up with us, and have a great New Year, everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you.
Welcome to the Let's Talk With Me podcast. Yeah, that's you're right. And as a semi-broke person, I've learned, live within your means.
Yeah, but also a lot of these people don't realize how much effort and time costumes take. So it's kind of like, yeah, if I'm doing work for myself, one thing, but charging you money, because the thing is, there's supplies, there's time, and this is a pattern I don't have. This I have to make things. This is guys, no, I know it's I know y'all want the stuff, but it's they're not running, it's not Hot Topic where they're running stuff off, they're not doing it.
Right.
There's somebody on Etsy's making the Hamilton kind of as a dress thing, but it's $200. I'm I know some can afford that, so I'm yeah, you're gonna have to do it yourself, girl. Seriously.
Yeah, people are interested.
Exactly.
I mean, I want to get into start building stuff myself, and I know whatever I want to do is because it's going to cost money. And
exactly. So at least the thing is though, at least research what you want to do, and then work toward it and see if it's feasible or not. These people just want to jump straight in. I'm no.
And that's why I'm just doing closet cosplays, because it's easy.
Yeah.
I know you've given me some good feedback on my makeshift Doctor cosplay. So.
It's not that bad. It's just that there's just little accessory things I could kind of do to touch it up. But for now, it's for closet, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's because there was a picture I was using. It's I'm gonna find it and send it to you, and I was well, it's close enough. So.
Also, the only reason why I know all this stuff anally is because I've been studying for years and helping people find a real thing. So I'm at this level of knowledge of the costumes as most people probably are not. That's just because that's just what I do. I just sit and stare at pictures all day long.
I understand. I'm grateful to it. It's nice to have some people, people like yourself that are helpful, and then okay, I just sent it to you.
Oh yeah. That's a good steampunk. Isn't that fan art?
Yeah, it's fan art, and that's the one I was kind of going with. I was it's close.
It's a good, yeah. To be honest though, I'm kind of I forgot. It's so realistic. I'm I forgot that was an episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
fan art is valid for cosplay. Seriously, it's valid. Because his look looks pretty steampunk anyway. It's hey.
Right. That's
once you label it steampunk, you can kind of get away with anything. Most people are okay, steampunk blank.
Exactly,
Like,
because that's something that was it, like I've seen that DC Comics has done, like the steampunk variants. I'm like, okay, I can kind of get away with something like this, and I just gotta figure out how to do it. But
exactly.
it's just um, I've been looking at a lot of images, and I'm like, I want to try this, and this, and Doctor's easier, so I'll go here first. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Because buying sonic screwdrivers for $30 or $20-something, that's not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
But because I want to get the new one, but I'm just gonna wait.
The 12th, I lose Sonics, so like I've kind of stopped buying them, but I'm tempted to buy 12th one. I'll see how I feel by region.
Yeah, I know Barnes and Noble has it, and Hot Topic has
Everybody
it.
has it. It's just a matter of like, do I want to spend money?
Exactly.
Essentially, because yeah, it's also for me. It's like, oh, there's other shiny things elsewhere, and I get distracted.
Do you all have the store called Think Geek?
We have Manhattan has a Think Geek, but it's very tiny because it's again rent. Rent problems. There's some stuff in there, but it's mostly dominated by the video game stuff. A lot of Star Wars, a lot of Harry Potter. The Doctor Who stuff is literally like maybe 1.5 shelves, and that's it.
Okay.
But that's because I think Think Geek would be able to carry more stuff in the store if they had more space. They just don't have enough space because it's the basement of a GameStop.
Oh wow. Okay. Wow. Because I haven't been to the one here. Like I know there's one in Cary, which is maybe about 40-some minutes away. So I'm gonna try and go.
I mean, I'm sure in a mall like outside New York, they probably have more stuff, but the New York one's kind of tiny because of the space. But obviously they have way more stuff online, like way more stuff. But I think the good thing about the Think Geek store is that you can have online returns there. You could like give it back to them there, so you don't have to like deal with UPS, which is nice.
Right. Yeah. It's because I was on their website looking, and it's like they have some stuff that I would like, but it's more like apparel and not a lot of like accessories. So
yeah,
I don't know. I'm not trying to spend all my money on geek fashion or cosplay stuff. I'm not.
Yeah, because also not everybody uses it. I mean, it's not. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure, people.
Yeah, and with the thing called adulting, you gotta put your responsibilities first.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why now, like now that con season's over until next year, I don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
So, but what was your con experience like this year?
Okay, this year I went the distance, literally. This year was very very, very interesting. My first con this year, I think, was Regeneration Who in Maryland. That's all. I'm going all the way back to March. It was very first time going there. I mean, it's a Doctor Who convention. So, I mean, how hard can it be for somebody like me? But it was really. I didn't know what to expect because I got initially some mixed reviews when I looked up the con because it was their second year. So obviously some of the negative reviews were kind of like first year convention jitters.
Yeah.
Like when a con starting up, there's some like, logistical problems but the reviews are mostly positive. I was like, oh, and I saw so many of my friends going the year before, but I wasn't able to because of school. So I was like, oh, this year I'm off, I can go. So I went down to Maryland. It was really, I loved it. Like it helped that so many people I turned out already knew were there. It also they had a really good programming mix in terms of us like types of programming and types of content. Like they had stuff which I haven't really seen in Doctor Who Con. They were very disability accessible, which I found like really interesting. Like they had like most of the major panels had deaf interpreters. I was like, I've never seen that at a con before. Usually it's like the main stage in your Comic-Con, if even that. So I was like, that was interesting. I saw they were really hardcore in their kids' content. All types of discussion, new Who, classic Who, their A-list guests, everything in between. And every time I'm walking down the hallway in whatever costume I was in, I was getting stopped all the time. And I was like, yay, this is great. Because a lot of times at the bigger conventions, people are not really looking at you when you're cosplaying Doctor Who companions because you just kind of blend in.
Right.
But so many, like, everything. I was like, they're like, oh my god, Amy's cool. Oh my god, your Martha's amazing. Like, well, Martha got a lot of attention because, again, like, because she's not done that often, especially when I had the leather jacket that is like the officially licensed one, so people were just like, oh my god, like, your thing is so amazing. And I met Ty, one of the correspondents for Black Girl Nerds, and she was like all over my outfit, and she was like, oh my god. And we started talking on Twitter, and it was like, it was great. Like, I met so many new people or just friends I haven't seen in a while, because for Regeneration Who, because they're in Maryland, like, a lot of people who can't get up toward New York City, like, oh, they have a more affordable option. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh, there's some people I haven't seen like a year or two. And it was good con experience. I was on a panel. I think I was on one panel, which just as a fill-in because somebody dropped out. It was on body image and cosplay, and it was a very interesting discussion because it was mostly, even though it was geared toward people who are plus size, I actually managed to jump in and say, well, racial tension is sometimes a body issue, because it's like, I can't control the skin color that I'm showing to the rest of the world, like, just like how it is not easy for somebody who is plus size to become skinny. It's like, there's kind of no way of changing my skin color, so it's sort of, body image issues are still a problem. And also, too, what society expects from a body is different. So I was able to kind of like give a kind of new perspective on a topic that people didn't think about before, and the audience really appreciated it. So I was like, yay, this is a great convention, not too much friend drama, so and a lot of friendly people, a lot of new people. I'm definitely going back. Just gotta finalizing plans because it's in March again, so I have to like probably get a move on buying tickets and stuff. But I have a hotel room, so it was a really good start to the con year. After that doesn't count as con. After that was LI Geek, which is the convention company I volunteer for, by the local convention. Every year, my local convention company, we run 2 cons. LI Geek is sort of which stands for Long Island Geek, because we're in the suburbs of New York City. We basically run that's our all fandom convention. Okay. This past April is very Star Wars heavy, so there's a lot of like Star Wars and classic sci-fi guests. And then our big main show is in November, which is called LI Who, and LI Who's just all Doctor Who all the time. But Geek was interesting because I was only there one day and a half, because there was just other things are going on, because I was actually also trying to graduate. So it was my, it was senior year technically, even though you don't really have a senior year in grad school, but it was my final semester, so I was doing a lot of like trying to get a job and finishing out the semester and paperwork and all this craziness and making sure that like final projects I passed it all. So LI Geek was kind of stressful because of just the real life stuff pushing in, but convention wise, really, really fun. It was just I ran several panels on my favorite not Doctor Who topics, which are period dramas. So I had a whole panel talking about like all the stuff that's on Masterpiece for past year. There's another panel there was a Downton Abbey farewell tea party, and by tea party I mean like people just like were crowding around like our little like teapot set and just talking about how much we missed the show. And there was another panel that actually what else was I on? Oh, there was also an Outlander panel because my friend Lorraine and I love like talking about Outlander all day, so we had a panel about that, even though it was scheduled early in the morning, so nobody showed up. But hey, it happens sometimes. But that weekend was just fun, just because even though I'm working and I'm organizing cosplay events and programming, it's still a lot of fun just because I'm like with my friends. And I'm working like for my friends, so it's sort of like, hey, it's just one big like reunion. After that was, I'm trying to think. after that was Coal Hill, which was another Doctor Who convention in Laconia, New Hampshire, but that was in May. But they unfortunately they ended up failing to secure enough money to continue, so it was like a one-off event. But it was the weekend right after I graduated, so like it was right after graduation. So like it was basically became a hey. I got my master's degree, let's party. And also I was on like 2 panels. It was mostly like, let's have a party in the woods now that I graduated. That's what it became. That was a lot of fun. I think that my main convention experience this year was I did the Holy Grail convention that people just dream about, which is San Diego Comic-Con in July.
Nice.
Yep, San Diego was like a whole other level. Initially, I had very high expectations for San Diego Comic-Con and got disappointed when the guest list started rolling out because your San Diego Comic-Con depends very heavily on who they book for panels. Like the tone of the con, like what happens there, like it's really determined on who they book. And Doctor Who, because it was on the hiatus, they decided to pull out of San Diego Comic-Con. They didn't have any Doctor Who panels there. They just had a BC America booth there.
That sucks.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, it was something they couldn't control. The thing is, at that point, they didn't even have enough. They didn't have enough material. Like they were still filming. So I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah, that's true.
Outlander, which is my other huge fandom, they had the same problem. They were filming, so they had the season ended, so they had no material to show. They're like, well, we're gonna pull out, but a couple of the Outlander cast were on panels. Like one person was on promoting their new show. One of the costume designer was on a panel with other costume designers, and then the guy who does the soundtrack for Outlander had his own panel on creating soundtracks for various movies and television shows, which was really interesting. So the way San Diego works is that it's a Hunger Games first to get your ticket. Then if you're lucky enough to get a ticket, which it turned out I had to have my friend in Canada give me her, like get both our tickets in. Then there's the Hunger Games. Then there's a lottery for your hotel room. So you have to like put your name in a tombola, digital tombola, and then it spits out where you go. Turns out our group ended up 5 miles from the con. There's shuttle buses, but if you're far enough away from the convention center, you're just like, you end up eating like about an hour of your day getting back and forth to the con, even though it's really not that far. But like with traffic, because the way San Diego's positioned, like all the traffic going to convention has to feed into one like avenue, and it gets very crowded. So like it was sort of traveling within San Diego in itself is kind of interesting. Well, once you're within the con center, like there's a lot of just walk around to different restaurants and eateries and whatever in the neighborhood right next to the con center. But it was a very interesting experience because there's a lot of lines. The one thing you do not see San Diego Comic-Con is a lot of photo ops and autograph lines. And when you do see them, they're free because nowadays they've decided to like stop charging for autographs unless it's like a comic book artist or something. Okay. Like a lot of the major studios and stuff, they will have autographs as sort of a swag item where the cast will sign it for an hour and that's it, or an author or sci-fi author will have a book signing and that's it, which is very interesting to me. Like, it wasn't like Wizard World or where it's like, oh, you could have an autograph with a celebrity at this time. It was a lot more like, how can I describe it? More promotional experience at the same time. When you went to a panel, you kind of felt it was slightly more interactive because they weren't there, since they're trying to promote things for free, they weren't charging a lot of money. It's like I've spent all my money in San Diego on the dealer's room. I didn't pay for a single like autograph or anything while I was there. I was like, oh, this is interesting, because usually I have to budget out money for autographs. I was like, this is odd. Like, I haven't paid for a single autograph from at a con or a single photo op. Like, I just got a bunch of selfies of some people at tables or whatever. I was like, oh, okay. Like, this is weird, but fun. There were some meetups. I met up with the Whovians in Southern California like twice. I met up with the Outlander group Saturday because both of the Outlander cast panels were like Saturday, so I ended up seeing that, which is very interesting. Because of I got to see Moana like the first 3 minutes before everybody else, which is kind of cool.
Nice.
The downside of San Diego, obviously, is the expense to get there and traveling and everything. And then there are little lines for certain things that are just out of control. Like, if you want the Funko booth, you have to, like, wait overnight to, like, get a wristband for Funko. There's also Hall H, which is, like, the big main stage room where all the huge A-list panels happen. Hall H is an adventure because a lot of the times you have to camp out either the previous day or several hours overnight to get into panels. Now, I was very lucky that the only Hall H panel I wanted was Sunday, and it was Sherlock. Luckily for Sherlock, I only waited 4 hours to get my wristband, and I went back to my hotel room, and I said, you know what? How it works with Hall H is that if you get your wristband, you're guaranteed a spot in line in a certain column, because they divide the line of columns. You're guaranteed a spot in your column if you show up by 7:30 the next morning. So I was like, okay, so I have my wristband. I'm going to go sleep, because I'm like, I don't need to stand out here. Because the only difference between camping out is just where you sit in the auditorium, and they don't allow you to, like, rush the stage anyway, so there's no point in, like, getting front row.
Okay.
Like, there's really no point. So, but people want to camp out there anyway. So, like, for example, if you want to go to the Game of Thrones panel, the Game of Thrones panel was Saturday afternoon. I saw people lining up for it Thursday evening.
Jesus. Okay.
Wow. That's the thing with, because there is roughly 6,000 seats in that room.
Oh.
Yeah, 6,000 is a lot. But then when you consider how many people are in San Diego Comic-Con, we're pushing 100K. That's now then it's like, But most people, a lot of the bigger panels, they kind of stream it online anyway, so people are just like, it's a waste of time. But I figured I was gonna be at San Diego. This is like my dream trip. It was my parents paid for most of it because I graduated. So I was like, you know what? Let me have that one experience at San Diego. I mean, the only thing that may have improved it really is just if Doctor Who and or Outlander showed up. But I feel like at the same time, that probably been way too stressful because I've been way focused on, like, lining up for that versus, like, just exploring the con and seeing people I haven't seen in a while, meeting new people. So it was one of those trip of the geek lifetime kind of things. So yeah, that was like the highlight of my con year. And after that was what was after that? Oh yeah, New York Comic Con, which is sort of like my hometown con. 8th year going. I had a very interesting New York Comic Con. Let's see. How to start New York Comic Con. This story ties into Doctor Who, so in a huge way. So Thursday of New York Comic Con, who was there? Matt Smith was there, Alex Kingston was there, and Jenna Coleman was there. And I've already met Matt Smith, but a friend of mine who has wanted to meet Matt for very many years but wasn't able to gave me their chessboard. They dressed up as Mr. Clever from Nightmare in Silver. They make the little Funkos.
Nice.
It turns out Funko ripped off the design. I'm like, that design. I'm like, that was on Etsy 2 years ago, and y'all just, like, ripped it off. Okay, so they dressed up as Mr. Clever and everything. Their name is Lee, and Lee gave me their chessboard, and I'm holding this giant chessboard coming up to Matt, and he's like, what is this? I was like, my friend who can't make it, they made this, so it's awesome, and we showed a picture of my friend, and Matt is like, oh my god. I was like, that was cool. Then I met Jenna Coleman, and I was kind of really hyped about Victoria, her new show, which is about Queen Victoria, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna bring the book Victoria's based on, have her sign it, and then I had a photo op where I curtsied to respect the queen, which was really funny. And then Friday was really the thing that set New York Comic Con for me off. So BBC America actually, for once, decided to show up at New York Comic Con and have panels. They haven't done a panel officially in about, I think, they've done a couple screenings of episodes, but not let's bring the cast over to New York during October of New York Comic Con. So this took a fair amount of, kind of similar to San Diego Comic Con, camping out. But luckily, we were in Madison Square Garden, and they said, "Oh, you can't line up for Madison Square Garden before 8 o'clock." We all know that people are lining up anyway, so I get there at 5:45 in the morning, thinking like I'm not going to get in because the panel started at 10. Turns out I was like the 22nd person there at 5:45 in the morning. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm making shade. I did not get front row. I got second row. That's only because I got held up by security check when we got inside Madison Square Garden because they still have like the wands and everything. So I'm waiting, and of course, BBC Mecca purposely they structured a panel where Doctor Who was last. We had to sit through Dirk Gently, and we had to sit through class before we got to Doctor Who. But I was like, okay, interesting stuff he's showing there. Okay, class is interesting. The trailer is just really vague because they didn't have an air date. I'm like, cool, I see the Doctor in that trailer, but I'm like, what? Where's, oh my god, the kids seem interesting. I'm like, okay, there's no anything because we're not seeing this till next year. We aired in England. I'm like, okay, we're not seeing this till next year, but this is cool. So Doctor Who came along. Stephen Moffat was there, Pearl Mackie was there, Matt Lucas was also there to promote the Christmas special. So they were talking about like being vague about Christmas special, of course, and they showed the trailer the first time they showed the trailer, and people were just kind of like, we're not sure what's going on here, but okay. Then came the question about season 10, which they kind of held a lot back because at that point they did not release a season 10 trailer. So, but what I did was I got to the mic first. Like I sat in front of the mic for like a good 10 minutes before they actually got to audience questions. And I stood up while I was sitting there, like kind of writing on my phone. I was like, my turn? Nope. Okay. Sitting there. So like as soon as they're like, we're taking questions, I pops up like right from like where I was sitting, and I was dressed as Bill. And I asked Pearl and Steve Moffat about, what do you guys think about diversity on television today? Because, hey, it's been quite a couple of years since we've seen POC Companion, and right. Pearl Mackie said, hey, why are we still having this conversation? Because people are not improving diversity. They're like, why are we still having this conversation? And people are like, yay, that's a great statement, because they shouldn't be having a conversation. Like, it should just be a thing. Like, the people who are in the world are just getting the parts they deserve. Or just like seeing people that look like us, like on television. So that her point was really good. And then Moffat was kind of like, I was kind of nervous because a lot of people in fandom he becomes a scapegoat for a lot of things. Mm-hmm. He, fairly and unfairly, people tend to realize that he's not operating inside a vacuum. Like, there's a lot of things in the industry he has to deal with. There's his higher ups at the BBC have to tell him what to do and what not to do. Yeah, it's sort of like there's factors in like his writing that not just his ideas. So I was kind of nervous. Called him Moffat and said, Steven, I'm like, I'm sorry, not trying to be rude, because like people use this as a diss. I'm like, no, I'm trying to be rude, not rude. So he answers that he's not trying to get brownie points or diversity. I was like, wow, that's a statement I didn't expect you to make. Because literally a couple days earlier, there was that kerfuffle with Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Over his hair. Yeah, that drama was a couple days ago. Before then, and I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, it was like 2 weeks before. I was like, oh man. Like, and it was so ironic with the Tim Burton stuff. It was that was after I met him for Miss Peregrine's, on the Miss Peregrine's tour. And I'm like, I met you and you say something shady. I'm like, really, Tim? But I'm like, okay. I'm like, Mr. Moffat, can you not say something shady? But he said the perfect answer. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, it was really comforting to know that, like, I am a fan of something that was, I mean, obviously I've made missteps in the past, but I'm like, wait a second, like, why 6 years of fandom has been thrown down the drain? Like, hey, I'm all in for this season, even though you're being horribly vague about what's happening, other than, like, Bill's companion, and she's going to travel with the Doctor, and there's Daleks. They're being really vague. They mentioned one thing that was seen in the trailer was, they mentioned the Regency episode. I think at that point they just finished wrapping up on it, but they really were kind of vague because they were still filming in October, so they were kind of like, oh, we don't really know what's going on. The panel ended. people were like all over my bill costume. Like even before the panel began, the DJ guy who like kind of hypes up the crowd before the panels come out was like, "Oh my god, we have Bill's here! It's like a Bill's now starting." I had her my outfit with her. I had the jacket you see in promotional pictures and the striped kind of leotard thing she's wearing and her Van sneakers and her jeans kind of ripped at the knee. I had the whole thing going, so everybody's like, "Oh my god!" And then my hair was all like teased out to the max. It helped it was kind of frizzy that week anyway, so it helped the maximum froage happen. Then a couple hours later, I'm walking around the con. I found out from a friend that they were doing this live, sort of like a live streaming thing for Twitch. So I found out where the green area was for the New York Comic Con guests to come in and out of, and I stood in the back waiting for the Doctor Who crew to come by. And when Pearl walked through the area, she saw me. She's like, "Oh my god, it's like you look like me, and I loved it." And I was like, I had this little moment, and I got a selfie with her, and I was like, that made my entire, like, not just Comic-Con, like, the year. Because, like, the second I heard a bill came out, I just, like, started crying. I was like, this is our time to rise as a POC human. And I did not think I'd meet Pearl, so that was, like, literally the highlight of my year, practically. Then other stuff happened near Comic-Con, but, it was mostly hanging out and friends and cosplay, and, I was for 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, I was dressed up as Angelica Schuyler from Hamilton, and it turned my entire hour and a half turned into just me standing in one spot doing the poses a lot because people just kept asking for photos. Kind of ended up kind of like Disney princesses, except a lot more shouting of the word work because people want to jump in and start singing with you, and it was just ridiculous. That was near Comic-Con. And then my last con was LI Who, which is one of my volunteer company's big thing. So I was not only in charge of cosplay track, I was also working the press room, so it's kind of interesting. And also speaking on a million panels on cosplay and diversity, and I even talked about my other like deep obsession, Poldark, for an hour, where my cosplay name comes from. It's a lovely British period drama that I'm a little bit too obsessed with, but it's okay. So yeah, all in all, I had a pretty good con year, but I think this year I'm gonna scale back a bit just because money. And also too, I'm planning a trip to the UK, so I feel like I need to scale back traveling wise. So I'm saving as much money as I can to have a really good time in the UK because I know also want my money to go farther now. Brexit. I mean, I know the like currency things in steel is going down to the base, and I'm like, I really want to have the most out of my time in the UK in 2018. So yeah, that's why I'm like, I'll cut back on cons. I'll do my usual volunteering at things, or just go to more events closer to home, just like more, stay within the East Coast a bit, not too much like far away traveling. Obviously, I want to go back to Regeneration Who. Blurred Con, which is in June. I want to go to that. Definitely New York Comic Con if I can get tickets, because it's always a hot mess. I don't know, maybe one, obviously, at like Who and Geek, because I work for them, and maybe like one or two other things. I was looking in January on Broadway Con, which is like here, it's about Broadway and theater. I'm like, that looks interesting. I might tour around there for a day. But yeah, I'm not really sure about my con schedule beyond that, just because I'm like thinking about like saving money for bigger things. Yeah, that's my con year, which is a lot.
You had a much more exciting con year than I did.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Because I didn't go to that much con. I do that much con wise or cosplay stuff this year.
Yeah, I mean, that was way more than I usually do. Like San Diego was like a huge trip. I mean, usually, I haven't gone out to California for a convention like several years, because like I used to go to Gallifrey one, but when I started grad school, it was kind of thrown out the window just because of money and also time. Because you have to take off a lot of time to like go there and back. But yeah, it was way more than I usually do. I'm like, I tried out new events, so I'm like, okay. Yeah, this next year I'm just like, maybe stick closer to home. Because that way, too, it's sort of like, it's hard when you're, like, on a budget, it's sort of like, traveling, it's like, and then you have, on top of that, is like, make costumes. I'm like, I'd rather go to a couple cons and have some really, really good costumes to, like, show, instead of constantly, like, going to events and kind of, like, not really having enough time to prepare. So, like, at least I had time between each convention to kind of, like, really prepare. So it was good.
And I think you had a good reward for finishing grad school. It's going
to
to
exactly.
cons.
So I was like, I had a feeling too that, like, time wise, it wasn't gonna happen again. In terms of, like, because I was in that period before I got my full time job, so I was like, you know what, I have the time off. Let me, like, before I really started, I was like, let me have this one time, because, like, when real life starts, like, I'll be able to take a week and a half to go to a convention. So yeah, it was San Diego was definitely a con I'd go back to, but I probably want to go back as, like, a paid member of the press, not as, like, a generic person. Just because I've heard, like, the industry parties are a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I've heard about those parties too. Like, you get more stuff, you get more enjoyment out of it than just being a fan.
Exactly. I mean, also, the days of you randomly running into, like, famous people at San Diego are long gone, because the con is just that huge now. Like, 4 or 5 years ago, my friends in California used to be like, well, I ran into John Barrowman just, like, hanging out. Like, what? Like, now it's very rare. Like, it's super rare these days to, like, just hang out with, like, super famous people, or just find them bumping into them in the hall, because, like, they're usually in packs, like, or they're in places where you have to, like, have access to. Yeah.
Goals for future cons.
Yep.
Because I'm trying to think, like, my year, I only went to, I think, 3 cons. So is it?
Okay. I mean, most people usually don't go to more than, like, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Unless they either have a lot of time on their hands, or there's somebody who, like, ends up working conventions in some way, shape, or form. Like, either as a vendor or as, like, like, again, you're, like, a volunteer staff member. Like, it's kind of hard to do more. Like, I think it's really hard, unless you're doing it in some kind of professional capacity, to do, like, more than 3 or 4 in a year.
True. And I'm trying to think, like, I know my first one, Oak City, was in April, and that was, like, the first one. So it was just one day. So it was like that's when I did the steampunk doctor thing. And then in May it was Animazement, and then I tried to do something new, like Professor Oak cosplay, like makeshift, and some people got it. And then that's when I had a moment where I forgot what character I was, and somebody asked me a question, and I was like, huh? And they're like, aren't you supposed to ask me a question? And it clicked. I was like, nobody approached me yet about asking the whole boy or girl question, and I was like, oh, right, because I forgot. So that kind of taught me, like, okay, make sure you're up on your character. Good.
Yeah.
And just kind of spent it. I only went one day for that one, and just spent it hanging out with friends and taking pictures. And then NC Comic Con last month in November, it was my first time actually being on the panel. It was like I was just asked, like, just sitting there. I was sitting in the audience waiting for it to start, and there's a panel on cosplay of the color, and our friend, my friend's on panel, and she was like, just come up and join us. And I was sitting next to a friend of mine who was dressed as Starfire, and I thought, you're talking about her. She looks more appropriate for a panel than I do. I'm just like a cosplay. And Frankie's like, no, I don't. And he's like, no, I don't want to talk. And then he's like, no, they would just go up there and sit. So it was just, so it was just like, okay, I'll figure this out. And getting to talk about experiences, and from a POC perspective, it was nice. It was a small crowd, but it was nice to actually have your voice heard and be on the other side of the microphone.
Yeah.
Well,
I really enjoy paneling. Actually, I forgot one more con highlight. Oddly enough, because it was so much happened this year. In May. A friend of mine submitted a panel to Wizard World Philadelphia, and shockingly, we got approved, because with these large conventions, you never know. Like, you never know, like, you submit something, you don't hear from them ever, but it was on fan participation and sort of the dark side and the light side of being a fan participant. And although that panel wasn't race specific, it was sort of like we touched on topics such as, we did bring race into it, but it was not the main topic. We were talking about like things like bullying online or negative behavior or trolling in fandom and how you engage with it or not, or on the positive side, things like a lot of fandoms do a lot of charity fundraising or just like, you know, community service work or advocacy work. And that was a really interesting experience. And not just because, hey, I'm a panelist at a big name convention. It was sort of like talking to an audience that like it was away from my home crowd, if you will. Like, it was completely people I never met before in the audience. And it was really, really like fascinating. And also was talking to people who I knew like on an acquaintance level, but like getting to know them sort of like as coworkers was really interesting experience too, because it's kind of like we're all coming from to this topic of different perspectives and different fandoms. So it's kind of representing the Whovians, if you will, because a lot of the other panelists were, I think a lot of them were like supernatural fandom or more of like the Teen Wolf and that kind of thing and that sort of like TV fandom. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like a lot of fantasy and a lot of supernatural things. I was like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, I love to talk, so I love talking like an expert. So I kind of like just gravitate toward paneling when I'm at a con. I also like hearing people talk and debating things if you can. So that's why I like, a lot of times I'm the cosplayer that tends to not walk the con floor. I just like sit in panel rooms all day a lot of times. So if I'm at a con where it's sort of like just a lot of fan-based panels or panels, the panelists are just not like experts. They're just like, you know, hey, I'm a fan, I strongly believe in this, and I'm just gonna talk about it for an hour. I'm like, I find that interesting.
Yeah, you know, there is something to say about that. Cause, I mean, yeah, you get a bigger draw, you know, like you know your celebrity panels, but when like people who are, you know, like you said, experts on things, you know, it's nice to have those because it's like, you know, it kind of drops the guard of like feeling like, can I approach this person? You know, we're on the same level versus, I guess, someone that's on TV or something where people kind of feel like there's like that invisible guard up or invisible wall.
Yeah.
So
and that was the one thing I found surprising about some of the San Diego Comic-Con panels is that some of the panels are sort of like directed at the industry. So even though you're a fan, like you can participate in these panels where it's like, oh, experts, like for example, a costumer panel, like just random costumers just coming up and asking these professionals questions. I'm like, this is really cool. Like they're putting their guard down and telling us secrets of like things in the industry. Or like, of course, we asked them about things they worked on, but I was like, whoa, this is really cool. Like we're talking about like, you know, civics and how to get in and how to encourage people, like, you know, for asking them for advice. And it was kind of interesting because like those big, massive panels, you kind of don't have that interpersonal experience, but that's kind of why like the fan, like the sort of like the smaller con experience is more valuable.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, back to Doctor Who for a second, I was thinking about, you know, in terms of us having like a POC, not cosplay, but companions. We haven't had, you know, like a quote unquote companion, but we've had your side characters that have made maybe 1 or 2 appearances in like the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, because Martha is, although Martha was a main companion, she was written by Rusty Davies, who has left the show for a couple of years. So we're talking, so since Moffat has taken over, we've had a couple of characters, but not as many or not as prominent as Martha and Mickey have in the past.
Right.
Why that is, people would like to argue, but I mean, it all comes down partially to casting. I mean, who knows? Like, who knows who auditions for what? And also, so many of the recent plots have been very heavy on like certain characters. So like there hasn't been as much room for like side characters to kind of grow and develop. So and obviously like the earlier seasons of Moffat, who like we had a song plot, and yes, Mel's was a POC, but she was only in 1 episode, and she was kind of pretty much essentially a river plot device. So it was kind of hard to like really I mean, it tested the waters in terms of like race bending and diversity. Was kind of hard because she was also essentially a piece of river, so it was kind of like it wasn't as diverse as it could be. And then you have the characters like Liz 10 and just your random like side characters that pop up for a little bit and then leave.
Right, because you had the woman that was in the episode Into the Daleks, the soldier.
Yeah.
Her.
Yeah, there's those kind of characters like the soldiers or random journalists, or like you're not really paying attention to them. Like, so they're not. I mean, they impact the story, but they're not really like important characters. Like, unless outside that episode, like they're kind of like there. They're not like influencing the plot.
Because like I mean, because she made the push. Is like, can I go with you? And he's like, no, because you're a soldier. And I was like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But then you had. What was that? The kid in the episode. Listen was Danny Pink. The Flatline episode.
Flatline was Riggsy. Then you had Courtney Woods, which is the Kill the Moon episode. But the thing with Courtney Woods is I feel like also we also forget the Maitland kids that Clara was watching in season 7 that like we kind of forgot about now.
I forgot. Forgot about.
Yeah, the only reason why I remember them is because I recently, in one of my panels was sort of like MS-T3K on like bad episodes, and I was like, this is like, where did they disappear to? Plot holes. It was really like these characters were not really that important in the scheme of things. And then Danny Pink in season 8 was, yes, he was a man of color, but at the same time, he's playing somebody who most of his plot had nothing to do with race. It was mostly his relationship with Clara and also the Doctor. And he had his own sort of trope baggage based on the story, which, I mean, yeah, he's there and he's like yes, he's a symbol of diversity in England. The problem is that his character, like, I think so many people got caught up in the whole relationship drama and not really kind of like, we're like, well, either I don't like her or I don't like him, or I think Clara should just be with the Doctor, like, forget him. Like, I think people were just not really paying attention to him because, like, his whole story was wrapped up in, like, somebody else's story. Like, he did not have a chance to, like, really... I mean, yeah, we have his personality stuff was fleshed out, but again, his entire plot line was to essentially be the secondary person to somebody, to a primary character.
Right. I mean,
and then of course he gets killed off.
Right, and they kind of messed up the whole, the Clara Danny timeline where they had the future person.
Yeah, that's the thing too, Dr. Woodley. Do a lot of this sort of like, oh, we're going to introduce a threat and then abandon it, and we're like, okay, what?
Right, because it just gave me hope for, like, okay, when he dies, like, okay, he's going to come back. When he sent the kid through, I was like, okay.
Yeah, it's like, okay, that's sort of timey-wiminess.
Right. But what do you hope they do, going forward, with Bill coming? What do you hope they do?
There's going to be, I think, Stephen Moffat and the other writers kind of need to realize that compared to several years ago when Martha was on, that there's a way more, social media is way more organized these days. B, that awareness of racial depictions in media has the conversation is a lot larger now, and it's a lot more people who are very activists in this area are a lot more organized than it used to be. I think a lot of the criticisms that the BBC got about Martha, I don't even think they really heard most of them because they were just like sitting in live journal chat rooms. Now they see the hashtag in real time. Like on Twitter, that Doctor Who hashtag is moving in real time. They're not hearing about things from the grapevine like as they used to. And I think with Bill, my hope is that the recent criticism in media, they really took it to heart about like a lot of like what fans are asking for is they're asking for realistic characters. And yes, they can have flaws. Yes, they can have, yes, they can have good and bad stuff. Yes, they can have relationships or not. But the thing is, there's certain there's certain tropes or certain stereotypes that are keeping problematic ideas about people going forward. So, like, for example, I mean, with the Bill trailer so far, I feel like she seems like a fairly normal, average, young woman for modern day. So, are we doing? Is she, like, for example, is she too shrill? Is she very angry? Like, things like that like tend to predict tropes. People are gonna be looking out for that way more than they did Martha. I mean, obviously, Whovians are also gonna be looking like, does she seem like a copy and paste of a previous companion, which we do that all the time. But there's certain sort of things in story that you have this diverse character. If it was like certain decisions and certain attitudes, like read one way with a white woman character versus a black woman character, for example. So sort of like my hope with Doctor Who is that, for Bill specifically, is that they're taking all the stuff that is seen in media today and really thinking about it and be like, well, okay, we're gonna have Bill be fully fleshed out. She'll have flaws and she'll have strengths and she'll be three-dimensional and she's not gonna sound like a trope and she's not gonna just be a plot device, which a lot of the companions often are, unfortunately. That she's more in the audience eyes, or more. I mean, in the trailer, she's doing a lot of, oh wow, what is this? Hopefully, she's not like. Hopefully, she's competent and can assist the Doctor and maybe put him down peg if he needs to be. It looks like Nordal's gonna be with them in the TARDIS, so I'm like, that's gonna be interesting. I also hope that her stories, while the anime touch on race, I hope like they don't become the main factor of the entire season. Like that maybe she could at least have some adventures where she's just a person and with the Doctor, a human with the Doctor. Like, can we just like, because I think some of Martha's side plot, especially her family, kind of got dragged down by the whole kind of like class issue stuff in England. Like, if we can kind of get rid of that as a factor. I'm going to, right now, a lot of times companions are judged on their relationship with the Doctor. And right now, I think, I don't know where they're going with it, but I want to say that I don't know if I can picture them doing anything other than like kind of like the niece uncle kind of thing, or like the student teacher kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, like I don't know where they're going with this. I don't know what the chemistry's gonna look like, really. I mean, it looks good so far on screen, but it's like I can't tell what's going on based on these plots. So sort of like, I really hope people can judge Bill on her own and not trying to compare it to other companions or trying to like wrap it up in like ship drama, which I think Whovians love to do. People love the ship war. It's like, okay, can we not talk about like compare her to Clara or compare her to like River or compare her to like, other companions? Like, yeah, can we just kind of judge her like individually? Also, I really hope too that fandom itself doesn't judge Pearl Mackie for stuff that the producers did, for stuff that Moffat did. Like, I think, because now that she's on Twitter, she can see us talking crap about her. Can you like kind of like, yeah, let's not go there. And I also think too, for the communities of color, I think the fans of color, like, I feel like because these issues hit closer to home, I feel like we can be a little bit too judgmental at times. Like, if we as a fandom could probably step back and analyze stuff before we kind of start ranting and see maybe, like if we can judge the thing kind of as objectively as we can before we publish that hot take on Twitter or the blog. Like, that'd be great if we can do that, or like just watch some more once to see if we could pick up on something, or maybe plot wise, I think with just the show in general, I mean, there's certain things we're gonna always end up seeing, like Daleks. I feel like this season, I really do not want them to spend too much time rehashing too much like existing history. I mean, obviously, I have a feeling Missy might come back, but other than that, like, can we just like not have too much like rehash of like past season stuff. Just like have some fresh new witch material because we have a new companion. Like we have a new companion and unburden my previous history in TARDIS because Clara, I think the adjustment period was from Capaldi Smith from Sister Capaldi Clara, I think kind of affected her story because they kind of changed her story.
Yeah, they did.
Her backstory changed between the two doctors, and it's like, okay, stuff is now disappearing from our own timeline. Okay, so like now we have a brand new start. It's like let's get some new monsters in there. Of course, you don't have to keep the Daleks in because we see them in the trailer. Obviously those flesh thing, like guy with the head split open thing. I'm assuming they're coming back.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. From last night.
I'm like, Marvel's coming back. I mean, I don't think River's coming back this season, although people were hinting about it. I'm like, if we can burden, like, if we can, because also another thing with Martha is that a lot of her run, if you think about it, there's a bunch of episodes where she was like second or third string because they were bringing back people from Torchwood. They were bringing in like Donna, who's in a couple of episodes. It's like, yeah, can we not have that where like, can we have episodes where she is the main character?
That's right.
She's me, and then Nardole is like acting silly on the side, and it's mostly about Bill, Like, let's keep that about her.
Because my concern, I was just thinking about too, like, because when Martha was on board, the Doctor was still like mourning losing Rose, and we see him from like last night's episode. He's mourning River, and I'm hoping it won't be a parallel of kind of like the same thing of like I'm upset about River.
And I think in this episode, I don't think he was as. But I think the mourning River bit is they had to explain why there wasn't why the Doctor was away from the Earth for so long, because we had over a year in the universe explanation, because we had over a year between episodes.
That's right.
So I think in the universe they're kind of using that as an excuse. I don't think he's gonna start S10 with that, because also I feel like they've learned their lesson to like not really do that, but we'll see. Because that's the really easiest way for a companion to start on the wrong foot is if it's too much of the Doctor pining over the last person.
Yeah.
Oh, also, if you think about it, though, River already died. Like, it's not the same where he recently saw her die.
Right.
And it's not even the same with Clara, because the thing is, at this point, Clara had already pieced out the picture years before.
That's true, because, now, do you think Clara could come back in the same with Ashilda, or no?
I have a feeling they're not going to do that. If they're going to bring Ashilda and Clara back, they're not going to do it right now.
Yeah.
And that's just a matter, and this is just me knowing what her name, Maisie Williams is tied up with Game of Thrones.
Right.
Jared Coleman as Victoria. Like, both of them are probably busy. If they bring them back, it's probably like some one-off Christmas special or Children Need. Like, I do not see them doing anything else with that. Like, I think that plot is dead. And I also believe most likely, because this season's the last season with Moffat writing, most likely anything that's left over at the end of S10 is probably going to be buried. Like, the new person's probably not going to take it on unless something like the Master or Missy, you know what I mean? Like, or a Dalek plot. Like, they're not, like, whatever stuff Moffat started, it's just going to get, like, pretty much clean slated. Like, you kind of expect the plot holes in this point with Doctor Who, and, like, companions leaving and exiting, I think, is like one of those things. It's like, yeah, it's when somebody leaves, it's done until they come back.
Yeah, because no show is perfect. I mean,
exactly.
No show, no movie is perfect. I mean, it's just like, oh, bless you. It's just like, where's the Doctor's daughter? She just went off into space and never saw her again.
Yeah.
Or who was, I still want to know, maybe I just don't know this, but who was the Doctor's actual child to have the granddaughter Susan?
Nobody knows that, actually.
Oh, okay. That's something I still trying to figure out.
There's some conspiracy theories about that.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I just kind of like wonder, like, did they just do that just for the sake of, starting a show, and you have to have, like, that, the wonderment of the audience, and that was Susan?
I have a feeling that there might have been with the 60s. I have a feeling they may have wanted to insert a mother in, but they didn't. As time went on, and the mythos of Doctor Who became created, they were just like, well, we're not going to go in that direction.
Right. Yes,
Because Doctor Who started as a way to teach children about science and history.
Right.
And, some adventure stuff in there too, but like as it grew into science fiction juggernaut, like that whole they lost their we want to connect with the audience in some way with like learning and education. Like they abandoned that kind of pretty much after the second Doctor era. You don't see that anymore. This turns into like, Doctor versus Alex and whatever craziness they want to come up with. Yeah, in the early seasons, I think they wanted to have Susan there just to be like, oh, it was Doctor Who was a children's program. It was not a science fiction thing. It was not for adults. Like adults kind of came on board after the fact. It was for 8-year-olds. So they would obviously have like a child figure. But after that, I don't think anybody really wants to answer a question at this point.
No, I'm okay if they don't.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a thing. It's just like another plot hole.
I mean, I think that TV movie, Adventures in Space and Time, that was a good retelling of the origins.
Exactly. I loved it. It was a good way to, and you see why like certain things that are like the way it is in classic Who. It's like, oh, that makes sense because it was the early '60s and this is where people were at the time.
Right, because I still need to watch the what was the animated one that just finished the season? Crap, I forgot the name of it already. The second Doctor Adventure that took 6 weeks to
air. Oh, geez, I forgot the name of it too.
Yeah, I'm gonna forget, but it was about the Daleks in the second Doctor. Yeah. I've just waited to watch it all in like one sitting. I knew it was gonna be done in a few weeks. I haven't watched it yet.
But, Power to Daleks. There we go.
Yeah, Power to Daleks. Yeah, I want to watch it because I want to see more stuff, and I'm happy they found the audio recordings, but a lot of things suffered from the time period of we don't have to keep stuff because we don't have to, and then stuff was lost in the fire, in that warehouse fire. So,
Yeah, I'm waiting for it to do it in one setting too, just because I'm like, especially my attention span is classic sometimes wanes a lot because there's a lot more filler in those episodes.
Yeah.
Because it's shot in a completely different format. So it's like, oh, you're taking like 3 hours to tell a story. Okay, and there's at least an hour change you could have just deleted from this plot. But yeah. Hopefully in the second Doctor, I don't think there's as much padding, but like later on you can really tell there's a whole lot of padding.
Because I'm trying to think, I know I watched I watched Genesis of the Daleks like online like about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like when they did the first 2 episodes of the last season, and they had the clip of the fourth Doctor. I just went online, I was like, okay, I gotta watch this and know what you're talking about. And I sat there like that one night and just went through the entire story.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is kind of long, but it was okay.
Yeah, they shot like certain stories. They shot because they shot in every interval. It was a 25-minute interval in the 70s, I think, or maybe 30 or 35 minutes depending on the thing. But it was over a course of a couple weeks, so it's sort of like closer to soap opera formatting nowadays or miniseries formatting nowadays. Like episodes are like kind of like each of them could be their own miniseries. Although a lot of them are very interconnected, but also they aired a lot of stuff out of order. Like they wouldn't air the episodes in order, like after the initial run. So like you'd see stories. It's just like, well, I saw Patrick Troughton last week, and now it's Peter Davison. What? Like that kind of thing.
That's interesting. Okay.
Especially in America, when they would do a lot of repeats, like a lot of repeats weren't in order. Like they would just show random things. Yeah. But it's on my list.
Yeah.
I mean, we still have quite a bit to go over the hiatus, so yeah.
Yeah, I know we got until April until it comes back. Yeah.
It
comes like April. I'm fine. I mean, I'm excited. I'm like, okay, give me something to look forward to. My birthday month, I'll take it. Great.
Yeah.
I don't know when it comes back. It's like 17th or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay. But I'm thinking now because like like last night they did introduce the new aliens. I guess I think they were new.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, and I'm like, okay, yeah, the guy wasn't captured by units, so he should come back in the season. I think.
Mm-hmm. I think I may need to rewatch it and not like now, like maybe closer to the season, just because I feel like people were too busy looking at Grant and the Ghost and not realizing that maybe there's stuff in there that we'll see next season.
Yeah,
Like that black CEO guy, like they were dropping the name of that company, that fake company is really aliens. I'm like, I have a feeling that's coming back.
yeah, yeah.
And why the spaceship? Like there was a lot of also too, there's also some plot hole. There's also a plot hole that I was just reading people's reactions. I'm like, wasn't the Doctor not supposed to be in New York because of like some time distortion thing?
I mean, because he was supposed to be there in 1938, but he can go a different time, right?
Also, I don't know what time period that even was.
Yeah,
I mean,
because because he made Pokemon Go references, so I was like, okay, it must be current. Because then, what was the girl? What's her name? Lucy.
yeah.
She said, oh, like she made like a bat signal joke. Said, oh, wait, is that an app? So I was like, okay, so they must be current time.
But of course, because they didn't film it in the city, they use like CGI New York, and I'm like, oh jeez.
Obviously, I didn't. I really didn't notice. I was like caught up in the hype of watching, but I'm going to watch it again. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I just
You're right. I could tell.
it's like well, the thing is when you're a New Yorker, you can kind of see when people because so much stuff films in New York, and you can kind of see when they do CGI in New York. It's just like what. But the reason I was looking for dates and stuff with Doctor Who is that sometimes it's like when something happens, it's sort of significant, but it was sort of this really vague like period. Like I didn't know. Because too, obviously, you have to look for like hints for next season. I'm like, okay, I don't know what's really. I think this is a really isolated story, or it's weird because the Doctor's been away from Earth for so long. Like that could be it too, or it could be just be in the not too recent future, or maybe that could be it actually.
Yeah.
It could be like the 20 years from now, but like 20 years from now looks a lot like today, so it's like okay.
And
It's like slightly better technology, but other than that, it's like looks pretty much the same. But yeah, it's sort of like you look for things like that because you wonder like about past stories and like who pops up. But yeah, I have a feeling that whole conspiracy is gonna pop up again
oh, yeah, I
because
agree.
the Doctor loves getting involved in Earth invasion. So yeah.
That's true. And I have to watch it again because like I was catching some of the stuff. Like okay, we're clearly gonna see this guy again. We'll see the company again, and I'm being vague because not everybody watched it by now. I know, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll see some stuff, and it'd be interesting to know how he deals with it. I mean, it did feel like it jumped around, but I think it probably was on purpose. Or then there's also that thing of they tend to cut stuff out in American broadcasts.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I'm trying to because there was some what I was trying to figure out is like what is going on with that gem? Like, couldn't they remove from his body? I'm like, I have a feeling there were scenes missing, and I wonder if it's because it was cut. Some people said it wasn't cut, but I don't trust that because given my experience of BBC programming when it moves to America, I'm kind of like, I think it got cut.
Yeah, because like I remember when I watched Listen on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
There's like an additional like I don't know 5 minutes or something.
Yeah. On when BBC content when it airs in America, whether if it's PBS or if it's BBC America, the episode lengths are physically longer because they have to be cut to 52 minutes, I think. Probably a little bit lower for PBS, but they have to be cut to like 52 minutes. They're usually a full hour or 57. So they usually have to cut at least 5 minutes from something. If they want additional bumpers, they may even bump it down to 48. Or I've seen sometimes it can be as drastic as a 42-minute cut. Um, That's really drastic. But usually with Doctor Who, they're chopping off at least 5 minutes for every BBC America version.
That's true.
Sometimes the edits are not noticeable, and then other times it's like, wow, you kind of left out this giant piece of explanation right here.
Because I know like there's like the what is the Stolen Earth and Journey's End. Like
Yeah.
like the re-airing now, unless they show like the actual hour 15-minute version, I think it's hour 15. Like they always show, this TARDIS is bringing the Earth back, and then it's like a rough cut, and it's really noticeable. And
yeah,
it hurts.
It is really way more noticeable with the Christmas specials and things like in those 2-part episodes where it's like, wow, they're really cutting stuff down. It's like, okay, like there's certain episodes I'm like, I don't even watch them on BBC America when they air because I'm like, I'm gonna get annoyed. Unless it's like background sewing music, while I'm sewing, I'm like, nope, not watching that because it's definitely super cut.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's just sort of like how it is. I mean, because even with PBS, in comparison, they do have supposedly, no commercials, but there's usually a bumper at the beginning of the show and a bumper at the end. So, like, for example, the period dramas, they're usually cut to like 52 minutes, and they're usually losing these 5 minutes of content. And sometimes the period dramas, they're losing like critical scenes. I was like, well, you mentioned that bracelet, but we didn't see where the bracelet came from, and it's an important part of the plot. I'm still gonna write an example. Like, yeah, it's like, oh, why is that person angry? Because you cut out the argument scene because you thought it was like, filler. I was like, well, that wasn't filler. I think the worst example of PBS editing I saw was the first episode of Home Fires, which is British period drama about women in a small town in England in World War II. It was one of those shows where it's like multiple characters. They cut out a scene that was supposedly filler, but like introduced 2 characters. So all of a sudden they're talking about Laura, and you're like, who's Laura? Well, you cut out Laura's intro scene. And this is the pilot. Like, it's like, okay, you're cutting from the pilot where it's like you're introducing the entire story.
See, that whole notion of, stuff being cut lost on the cutting room floor, they need to have like the objective perspective.
Well, I think part of the problem
too is why. But,
yeah, I mean, we understand why, but I feel like too sometimes is that a lot of times that they're cutting, they don't know what's important until later on.
Right.
Like sometimes something that looks like harmless dialogue, like they don't know what the writers are planning. Because there's a lot of arguments to my other main fandom, the season Poldark. There was a lot of confusion because the U.S. edits cut a lot of seemingly innocuous things, but then it would explain things later on. We're just like, well, what happened with that? Or that scene looked completely different because they cut out a whole section of dialogue. Even the most controversial scene from Poldark last this season was edited in the United States just because of time, and it looked like an ideological edit, which is weird. It looked like a censorship edit, but it turned out, I think they said they edited it because of time, but also because the scene got negative feedback in the UK, so they're kind of nervous about America. And I'm like, America's the land of free. We kind of don't care. like we kind of don't care about ideological based censorship because that's not what we're about. But okay. But yeah, it's sort of like a lot of times they don't know when they're editing until like after the fact that something will be important, or what fans will think is important versus what they think is important too.
That's because when you get like the DVDs or the Netflix cut or something, like episodes are usually longer.
Also, too, although I've noticed in some shows, like the Amazon, like there's some shows on Amazon, like this cut is actually cut itself. I was like, wait, what? But it's Amazon. Why is it like cut? But I feel like there's some of the period dramas, they only have the rights to like what was aired on PBS originally in America, so they don't have the original BBC or ITV cut. So like, oh, that's weird because I'm like, this seems edited, and it's Amazon, and Amazon is into space, so it's kind of odd, but licensing and whatnot.
Yeah, because I know when they air the like Christmas episode again, like, during the year, we know it's gonna be down to an hour. It won't be an hour and a half. So
yeah,
there's gonna be like that 30 minutes of like what was cut,
mm-hmm.
and you gotta just rack your brain and figure out, okay, what was different.
Yeah. Although I noticed too, BBC America, they tend not to air the Christmas specials during the middle of the year. They tend to save them for like special marathons.
True.
I've noticed, I think because of the fact that they had to cut too much to air an hour. Like I noticed the reruns they try to avoid. They try to avoid doing the 2-parters too.
Yeah, you're right. Because on a rare occasion, they'll do like the 10th Doctor's last 2 episodes, but then they'll just put it on for 3 hours.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm like, yeah, okay. Like you are always looking for a nice afternoon filler. I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
it's fine. But I'm looking forward to whatever it is we're gonna get next year. I mean, I have hope.
Yeah, me too. I'm very hopeful. I mean, one thing is for sure that I'm really, really happy about is that Bill is going to. I hope. I was in some threads on this on Twitter today. Is that I hope more people of color are joining Doctor Who fandom. Now, some people on Twitter were kind of like apprehensive because of either their previous notions about Doctor Who, likes and dislikes about the characters, or also perceived slights on representation. But then, on the other hand, what I was trying to tell people, which I think some people didn't get that message, I'm like, this is a fandom where I don't see a lot of as active blurred participation as other fandoms. Like, if you look at the blurred blogs, like, they're talking about a lot of other stuff and a lot more often than Doctor Who. I mean, granted, some of that is maybe because it's a hiatus year. 2016 really didn't have that much going on aside from the trailers and Pearl's announcement. But I'm like, I, for myself, end up scrolling through blurred websites for days before I see a single mention of Doctor Who. And then when I bring it up today that more people need to join in, I get shouted down. I'm like, okay, that's weird. That's odd.
Yeah, because I have encountered some people who are like, oh, I don't really understand why you like that thing, but okay, but then you tell them like, well, there are black people on there, like, and why? Why should I still watch it? So I don't really know how to tell them to watch it.
That's the thing too. Like I think with which I'm kind of exploring for my own like journalistic interest is that in this current climate with a lot of people being more aware about diversity, are people just avoiding things that seem too white presenting just because they don't think it's for them?
That makes sense.
Or of course because it's British, it's sort of like that other cultural angle. It's like, well, I'm American, I have to understand. I mean, because taste is definitely a factor. I mean, let's not deny that. But I think also too, I think exposure is a problem. I also think that for better or for worse, if people kind of only hear about Doctor Who from their friends, they're hearing like negative reviews, or they're hearing like, well, I don't see two people who look like me in the show. Like, why should I bother? Like, that's probably the decision we were making. For myself, I guess I have never. For myself, like I kind of tend to see past. Even if something is white presenting, like I find ways to connect with it that don't have to be, just like, oh, this character went through something I find interesting, or oh, I like that love story. Like maybe other people can't. Maybe other people, I wouldn't say can't, but just like they find it much harder to do that. They think, or they want to, they're like, well, I want to spend my time on media that reflects the world I believe I live in, or I want to live in. So I guess that's sort of like where people were coming from with that. But I found it interesting. I hope Bill does bring more attention. I think hopefully the black nerds who were tired of Moffat, that's what they say, hopefully they come back to at least try Bill out. Because I feel like a lot of people in the past couple of years have kind of wandered away from Doctor Who just because of various things in the show. Can you guys come back, and be more active? That's another thing too. It's like I feel like people are watching Doctor Who, but they're not active in a fandom.
Right.
And as somebody who was like volunteering for Doctor Who conventions, I'm just like, a part of me is like, I have to realize like, okay, no, not everybody can be like you, Amanda, like going around the country to Doctor Who cons. But I'm like, can you guys be more active? It's kind of, but again, I mean, activity costs. I mean, in some ways it does cost money, but also too, I forget is that not everybody may come from a place where the fandom itself is very active. Like in New York City, we always have meetups going on. Like BBC America's headquarters are here, so there's always stuff going on. Not every, I mean, it's kind of hard to like. It's sometimes hard to see like that local fan meetup at your local anime con because again, like that doesn't get that much attention. But like, you know, when BBC America comes out with the cameras at New York Comic Con, people see that, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I definitely will bring. It's a good cosplay opportunity for sure. It's Bill's outfits are very modern. With I mean, she has one period piece on, which I'm trying to sew on now, but she's looks like a modern woman. So hopefully people would find like either the real pieces or similar pieces, and she has natural hair, so hopefully people don't feel that pressure to like change her hair because she has the natural hair on. So people hopefully see more of her around cons. Yeah, just more Doctor Who things, period. Because I feel like too, just more options for cosplayers of color. Just because I feel like a lot of times the Whovians I notice tend to either do Martha if they're girls, or they'll do like a TARDIS, Dalek, you know, Cyberman or something, or they'll do like a femme doctor. Like I haven't seen too many attempts at like race bending, and I mean, I haven't seen too many people like attempting like race bend Clara or Amy, which I've done a lot of because I have no chill and I just like to hoard dresses. So I hope, yeah, Bill would be a good option because I mean she wears stuff other than that same red jacket over and over again. So yeah.
Because who was the character that was in charge of the silence? Who she had the eye patch? I forgot her name.
That was Madame Kavarian.
Okay, because there was somebody, and actually they were on the panel I was on last month. And they're black. So I was like, okay, wow, it's another black person who actually did do another Doctor Who character, and then she did the 11th Doctor the next day. So
Kavarian you don't see too often. I mean, I feel like I saw Kavarians right after that episode aired, but like after like that season aired, I'm like, I haven't seen Kavarian since. Like I see Amy the Eye Patch, I don't see Kavarian, but I could see why we could see why like a cosplayer color pick a character like her because she's like an alien.
Right.
So and also too, I mean, it's just a black suit, and that eye patch is like $20 on Etsy, so I can see why that would be popular. Like no, not popular, like a decision that somebody would make.
Yeah, and speak on the thing that you said about people, saying something doesn't represent them. Like I do have a lot of friends that are like they can't do the sci-fi stuff or anything like that just because they don't really see representation, but they'll stick to stuff like Cosby Show or stuff like that because that's what they know. And I understand it, but
for me, I tend to, which is kind of not the best thing to say this, but in the past I've had very little sympathy for that, and I'm wondering if it's because of the fact that from an early age, like the stuff I watched. Yes, in childhood you do watch, in the 90s on black sitcoms, but I connected more with PBS's stuffy old period dramas, and I loved and then I watched a lot of the adult sitcoms on NBC. So I was watching Frasier, or I was watching Friends and Seinfeld, and the stuff that it's very white presenting, but I'm like, oh, these characters are hilarious, or I feel sympathy for their plots, and I've kind of, even now that I'm more of an aware person of color, I still notice that a lot of what people are into, I just don't have a connection with. I don't have a connection with at all. I don't understand anime. Comics and superheroes, I am more, every year it goes on, I'm more trying to dislike them all. I have not watched since 2012, a single thing that Marvel or DC has put out, movie-wise or TV-wise. I have not watched any of those shows. Like, if the second I see that label, I'm running for the door. I'm not even kidding you. Literally for this past year, because Doctor Who hasn't been on, I've only been watching period dramas. Mostly, well, with the exception of Roots and Underground, everything British. With that sections, because right now American period drama to me tends to be, when they call it period drama, it's like, oh, it's 1980s. I'm like, no, you need to go back further. It's like, that's not acceptable. Like, 80s is not acceptable as period drama to me. Like, you need to go back like at least to the 60s. I've seen way more American movies in the past than American TV shows. The far past. I'm like, y'all need to get better on that. Actually, Mercy Street's another one I've been watching, but it's like, again, because it's weird. Like, the only time I see shows that are diverse are because a lot of the period dramas are like slavery stories or stories specifically about racism, which, I mean, industry changing about that's a whole other conversation, frankly. But I mean, Hamilton's a step in the right direction, that they race bent all these characters, which is, I'm like, if we can have more TV productions like Hamilton, using Hamilton's methods, not the characters, using their casting methods, that'd be great. But I feel like we're still kind of a long way from that. And I think half of Hamilton's success is basically because like Lin just shoved the door open for everybody. Like, he just shoved the door open just because because again, also he kind of, at that point, he already kind of made it in his career. So like, it was like the risk of Hamilton was like a much lower risk than like somebody trying to do it after the first time. But yeah, it's sort of like my kind of like wish list is if I could see a British period drama using Hamilton's casting tactics across the board and not just one or two characters. Because, like, for example, on PBS last week, they aired this Shakespeare depiction called the Hall of Crown series. Sophie Okonedo is playing Queen is her name? Queen Margaret? Yeah, Queen Margaret. And she's a black woman playing a queen of England in like 1410. And I mean, the audience, she blends in with the rest of the cast, but like, Farmy's sitting here like, wow, I'm wondering how much hate mail she got about this. Yeah. Oh, those queens weren't right back then. I'm like, this same queen believed that she was descended from like seals or something crazy like that. Like, her family like believed that they had like supernatural powers and some craziness. So I'm like, yeah, you're telling me we can't have POC in period dramas, but apparently we can have characters that believe they're like magical. I was like, okay, that's the magical characters are more believable than black people at a certain time in history. I was like, okay, that's great.
If I'm not mistaken, isn't Octavia Spencer supposedly playing God in like a movie or something? And people giving her slack for that.
Yeah, but I'm like, but y'all liked Morgan Freeman doing the same thing?
Yeah, it's like, okay.
But I think in the UK, particularly with their period dramas, they tend to have this view where the period dramas about to teach history, or if it's like Shakespeare or something like, based on a historical fact, like, for example, The Crown. Like, obviously, that's not a piece where you confront diversity because it just was not. Because we're talking about upper echelons of power in that time period, we're not going to be any POC in sight. Exactly. But if we're talking about things like that are based on novels or poems, the view is, well, there was no black people at the time, air quotes. Why are we putting POC characters in? I'm like, well, actors can just act material, like cast the actor because the actor knows the part, not just because they're white. But I feel like the industry is not at that point yet where they can selectively start doing casting in a certain way. Mm-hmm. Before, and of course, people who want to see things the way it always is are gonna keep complaining. So it's sort of like, yeah. But I think that's sort of like my eventual goals. I think. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I think me being in these period drama fandoms is sort of like my way of saying, hi, I'm here. If you can have more things to cater to people like me, that'd be much appreciated, instead of just us, like, you know, yes, these stories are great and these characters are great, but like if we can have more material, it's like, can we have a story about PVC it's not like slavery or not you know, colonialism based, or we're only in a story when it has to do with like Africa or Asia. Like for example, Indian Summers was a show that got canceled on ITV a couple recently. It was period drama, but of course it was about India pre British overthrow, and you wouldn't see those Indian actors in anything else. And in like a standard period drama, you wouldn't see them. The only time you saw them was a story about India and about racism. It's also kind of boring as well. Kind of, that's a whole other story.
Because it also makes you think about, like, you look at like the like you know, the quote unquote black shows, and they were dealing with, you know, getting out of the neighborhood or what have you. And like, can we have, you know, shows with, you know, that has representation, but can they not just be about, you know, somebody making it out of this or going to college? Like we can have regular stories. I mean, I understand how they work and they're important, but can we have more?
Also, too, just different things. Period. Like in America, like I'm noticing the thing. Yeah, like this. It's the same problem in England. It's like because I like history. A lot of these period dramas are just basically it's all racism and slavery and nothing else. Even though, like, I mean, recently I have to see it still on Hidden Figures. Yeah, there's racism in there, but it's like, oh look, an untold story about people we should be celebrating. Like that was hidden until a couple of years ago. Like we need more things like that, because like, or even just stories about black, you know, figures that we don't talk about every day, but they contribute stuff somehow. Like there's so many biopics and like historical tales they can tell, but I mean the industry is sort of like in some ways regressing,
right,
as they're moving forward. And also, to another thing people need to kind of look out for is China is putting a lot of money into Hollywood, but it's like, what are they putting their money into?
Interesting.
Yeah, because I noticed like I've seen trailers for a couple of movies that are like fronted by a Chinese studio, but it was like for some reason, it was all like movies about like white teenagers. I found that odd. I'm like, okay, wouldn't you guys want to front movies with Asian people in it, or is it more of a we got to keep the line with Chinese government, so we just have like the most generic white people stuff ever, and that'll pass muster with our censor overlords? I don't know. It was interesting.
So that movie, the Great Wall, I remember people were giving that flat because of Matt Damon being the main lead.
Yeah.
Was there issue? I mean, what was there more issues with that other than he was just cast as like the main lead, or was that it?
I don't remember the Great Wall specifically. I remember the drama over Doctor Strange, but I think there was even an argument with the comics about how the original intent was supposed to be. I think with Doctor Strange, the issue was that it was the story mentioned Tibet, and Tibet is a no-no in China. They can't mention that.
Oh, that's right. They can't do that.
So, but they decided to not cast any Asian people at all, just to avoid the issue, just make it like fake Asia to get around that problem. You know, it's still a problem and they're even doing that, but it's sort of like they censored themselves in order to get like release in China. The Ghost of Shell is another one I think that popped up recently because it was a Japanese anime that they are now in Hollywood, and Scarlett Johansson's lead now instead of some random Japanese actress.
Yeah.
I think their excuse was money. Like, we want people to see the movie, but we're not gonna like have them like really. Like, I'm sure they could have found some well-known Japanese actress that could speak English to do the role.
Yeah, I think they could, but you know, they want to sell. Like, you know, there's nothing wrong with her as an actress, but pick somebody else.
Also, too, the thing is, these days, unfortunately, the regression crowd is getting louder, and certain people are amplifying that voice of aggression.
That makes sense.
Yeah, like the amount of like trolling I've seen online of race-related issues has gone like way up, and I think it's because of the election and how it ended and how it resulted. So yeah, there's a lot of that now too.
That's true, and
like people are pushing back as much as we're advancing.
That's true. I think like there's another story like the whole Netflix series Iron Fist. People were getting upset because they cast a white actor to play Danny Rand, and I was like, well, technically Danny's white, so why are y'all getting upset? I mean, I understand, but shouldn't y'all like do your research first before you like try to
that was something that annoyed me with the Miss Peregrine's controversy was when Tim Burton said some stuff about how he doesn't want to. I forgot what he said, but it was problematic about like he's not trying to like use quotas or lottery or whatever when he's casting. Like I think that's what he said.
Yeah.
But the problem was people were calling the book racist, and I'm kind of like, did you even read the book? Like, yes, this was a fantasy story, but the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, half the book takes place in England in 1942 or whatever. If you had POC peculiar children, aka the children with special powers, I'm pretty sure that they would not be able to be hidden in general society at that time because people would see their skin color and be racist. And because these people were like seen as peculiar or like kind of like to the untrained eye they look like witches or something, like they probably die. Like this is not like the book has an in-universe explanation for why things are as they are. And then also too, they didn't even realize the author wrote like extra stories beyond the like, and there were peculiars around the entire world. Like there were whole expanded thing in the universe, but they didn't do the research and they start calling the author racist and all this stuff. And I'm like, y'all forget that there is the book, then there's what Tim Burton adapted. Yes, you can criticize that based on face value. I'm like, but if you're going to talk about the book, talk about the author, and the author didn't even realize the author is married to an African American woman. So I'm like I really, in terms of like he's racist, I'm like I really don't believe that. Like I really don't. Like just like there is an in-universe explanation for what y'all were about to say, but no, you're too busy wanting to get clicks for hating on Tim Burton instead of like doing your research. I'm like, hey guys, do your homework, like please.
See, and,
like
and that goes along with that whole sharing of fake news thing. That people don't take like the 5 seconds to fact check. They just share something just because. I mean, I know I've done it before, but I've learned now, like go and fact check before I share something.
Especially it's something with race stuff because like a lot of people too like. People do. I mean, the social segment sometimes mean well, but a lot of times, if one person gets like, because they didn't check the background or something, one mistake, even if it was well intentioned and not purposeful, turns the whole conversation into something different. It likably turns the conversation around. It's like, well, I would have benefited from that piece of information that you kind of accidentally left out of your article. Yeah. Or people just share like. These days, like because so much of like the not reported news goes on my Twitter, like so much these days it's like, oh well, I shared something that turned out to be a hoax. Oops. Or somebody's highly, or not even a hoax, but like somebody's really opinionated slant on the thing.
Because I think I do remember once like there was that article about saying Chick-fil-A didn't like black people, and people were sharing it left and right, and then I was like, I know that's not true. So I Googled it, found that it was fake, and then I posted the response, and people stopped sharing it. I'm like, would you just go search for it yourself? I mean, you have a phone.
Yeah.
You got Google.
Yeah, and also the thing is, I feel like a lot of times people see when they hear stories about this thing being racist or that thing being racist, they'll be like, our instinct is to just get angry first of all, and then not really realize, A, where is it coming from? Who's saying this? And B, like, is there another side of the story?
Yeah.
Like, it's also somebody maybe sharing an outrage piece to make it. For example, if they're trying to sue somebody, they're trying to put out the information that's going to benefit them in their lawsuit. For example, like different cases like that. I'm like, you're saying this because you want money out of them, okay? Or like the truth is closer to somewhere else. Like it could be he says, he said, and then really the correct answer is they said.
That's true.
Yep, there's a lot of that these days. But when it comes to my main thing with geek fandoms is more like, good lord, for the 85th time, that rumor is fake. No, we're not getting a sequel to that movie right now. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Like, okay. Just like, this Rogue One just came out and it's been out for a few weeks now. Like with that one. Everybody's asking, is there going to be a sequel? I'm like, the sequel came out was the first movie. 1977. That's the movie that's the next movie. Is there going to be a sequel? I'm like, A New Hope? Huh? Like, the first movie is a sequel.
Yeah.
And then the end of the movie, I mean, spoiler for those who hadn't seen it, it literally goes into the next movie. And then, like, I'm loving these internet articles coming up saying George Lucas is tapped to write the sequel to Rogue One. I'm like, thank you for making jokes out of this. And then for people who don't get it, I'm like, you're just not gonna get it. Come on, okay,
fine. Another new thing now is when shows end is when people put out speculation articles and then they actually write it as if it's the real news. I'm like, no.
Oh,
that's
boy.
not. Poldark is one of the frequent victims of that in the UK because they figured they can just get, all they need to do is have one hot picture Aiden Turner in and some speculation they made up, and then that just gets clicks. So that's why they've been doing a lot. But they don't realize it's based on a series of novels. So they just start making up, and the novels take place in 1795. So they start making stuff up about divorce court and like spousal support. I'm like, child support did not exist in 1795. Like, what is this? Like, you're clearly, like, you're taking a plot from a Jerry Springer episode and writing it as if it's Poldark. And I'm like, that's not what happens. Like, one Wikipedia article would have solved your life. Like, because I know the book's so long. Like, there is Wikipedia for you right there. Like, the book was written in 1973. Like, you can find it. Like, you can find the plot. Don't make stuff up about divorce court and spouses running away that didn't happen and child support. It's just, what am I reading? Like, I'm just reading some clickbait. That's kind of what I'm reading right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I think with yeah, I know it's fun to do it, but we gotta kind of learn to curb all this stuff and just pay it no mind. I mean, some of it's fun. Some of it's fun. But
sometimes I like read it just to mock it, and I'm like, I'm moving on. Like, I'm not wasting my time on this. Like, if it pops up on my FB feed and people are like, "Is this true?" I'm like, no, just no, guys, no, it's not true. But let's see.
Oh, and before I I was going to ask you about Hamilton because you talked about it before. I didn't ask you because I know you saw it.
Yeah.
I did want to mention talk about BBC and Twitter. Like last night before the episode aired, I sent out a tweet out a picture of me like wearing one of my Doctor Who hats and a sonic screwdriver and stuff in hand, and then the Doctor Who page liked it, and I was like, oh, I was noticed. Okay.
Yay!
So they do see things now, and going with what you said earlier, they do notice.
Yeah. In terms of like last year, I haven't been on Tumblr as much as I used to be in previous years, but I made sure to go back onto Tumblr during 28 days of Black Cosplay to see if, my old cosplay pictures would gain some traction. I noticed that most of the time, my 28 days post would only have 1 like here, 2 likes there, but then over a weekend, when you kind of put your post in a queue, I started getting phone messages on a Sunday blowing up like, wait, what happened? And then I go back on Tumblr to realize that BBC America reposted one of my 28 days pics, and it was Amy Pond from In the Forest of Night, where she's kind of like going around blind, and I had a shot like recreated that, and it got like 500 and change notes or something ridiculous like that. I was like, oh my goodness. BBC America knows about 28 days of cosplay. It was really, really cool. I mean, I would have liked to see more likes from, from the black bloggers. I was like, hey, well, maybe that's Doctor Who and they're not really as familiar as that with as opposed to other fandoms. So I was like, you know what? That's cool. Maybe next year I'll have costumes that people will be more able to recognize. So sort of my goal for next set of 28 days, which is coming up in next month, actually. Wow. Can't believe it's like already almost February again. That's crazy. But yeah, they will they're very the doctor people are very active in just like they'll find stuff and repost it or just like it even. Like they'll track stuff, they'll be like, hey, here's your gold star. And they tend to kind of do it just across, like, I mean, obviously getting the person sitting there at the right time is key, but like they tend to like a lot of stuff, like from a lot of different people. So, and I feel like too, they kind of, at least the curation of this thing are now clearly, they're clearly trying to like, if they can get black cosplayers to submit stuff, they will post it. So, they will like, for example, I got at New York Comic Con, they interviewed me, so I was like, hey, it's great. So I feel like people aren't even no matter what fandom you're doing it, like if you use the official hashtag, like people are gonna notice your stuff. Like it's totally worth putting yourself out there.
That's true. Oh yes. Before we wrap things up, please talk about Hamilton. Like I know we talked about earlier, but I want to hear like your experience in terms of like actually seeing it in person.
Okay, well, the struggle with Hamilton is very real. I bought my tickets to see it November 9th, 2015. My show date was October 21st, 2016. So that was nearly a year I had to wait. I could have seen the show earlier in 2016, but at that point in 2015, I had no idea what my schedule was going to be. And stupidly, I could have bought tickets to see the show before Lin-Manuel Miranda left, and most of the main cast left. But I was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do this summer and vacation or whatever in school. So I was like, let me wait till October. Sort of a bad decision, but sort of not at the same time. So it was a lot of waiting it. And mind you, I live in Brooklyn, so not like going to Broadway is a struggle. Obviously, I tried doing the lotteries and stuff, but I realized it was way too evil. Like, once I got my own tickets, I was like, you know what, I'm fine. I bought my tickets before it became literally impossible to get tickets now. That was before they started. That was before the scalpers were really, like, active. Like, I got my tickets directly from Ticketmaster, directly from the theater for a pretty reasonable price. Reasonable for Broadway, not reasonable for the average person. Like 150 and change a person. I had brought 2 seats, one for me, one for my mom, but my aunt ended up going. So it was a waiting game, and I kind of gave up the lottery. I was like, you know what, I already have tickets. I might as well just like let it ride until, as I kind of resigned myself to knowing that the main cast may leave by the time I saw it, which is like, I'm fine. I'll see it with whoever the replacements are. It turned out October 21st was a significant day because the PBS documentary, Hamilton's America, aired the same night I saw the show. And I did not plan that way, because initially when PBS announced it, they said it was the 17th of October.
That's right.
So I was like, but then they switched it to the 21st. I was like, oh my goodness, that's a great coincidence. Yay, an important milestone in the fandom of the documentary, because the documentary, for a lot of people, that's the first time they're seeing more than that one 12-second shot of the show. Although there's still a lot they didn't show in that documentary, but like they showed you full sequences of the songs. More than just the quick grand performance. Like there was a lot more stuff in there. And a lot of behind the scenes things too. So it was way more than most people have seen before. I mean, so it was very momentous. That same week, the premiere for the documentary was in New York City, so I ended up waiting on the standby line for that free ticket for like 8 hours, but it was worth it because I got this kind of crappy selfie with Lynn in the background, and I saw the red carpet and celebrities, and I saw a documentary of everybody else. That was the Monday before it aired. I was like, this was a lot of fun. And then I got to see Hamilton's show. I've walked in front of that theater several times just because in New York, like, you kind of just, people want to see the doors. They're just like, oh my god, it's like a landmark. So there have been a couple times where, like, I have gone in front of the theater, like, to either do the lottery before these turn it, so before it became online one, just like when friends want to see the stage door or whatever. Or there were a couple times I waited stage door, but I realized the crowds were too long, big, so I was like, whatever. Well, the day I actually saw it, like, I nearly, like, kind of cried. I saw the marquee because, like, I'm finally here. So the theater itself is slightly smaller than you would think, but there's literally no bad angle in the house. Like, everything kind of goes to gravitate toward the center stage, and this is mostly wood. It's historical, and seeing, because everybody right now who's really into the fandom has seen all the songs. We've all heard them. Like, we see the songs in our head, but, like, seeing the in person, seeing the costumes and how they work, and seeing how that center stage turns around a turntable, kind of. Like, there's a turntable thing in the center, so certain songs, like, they're rotating around it and singing, and seeing the chorus in the background, or the ensemble, and seeing the different characters rotate in and out, it's really, really exciting. And luckily, when I saw it, everybody who was like the main cast was there. I think the only replacement they had was like one minor character, so it was most of the current A-list cast right now. So I was pretty lucky in that regard. I saw a couple of cast members before they left. I saw Chris Jackson before he left. I saw Jasmine Cephas Jones before she left, and I also saw Oak. I forgot his last name. Who plays Mulligan, and Madison. I forgot his last name, but he was there before I left, so that was fun. At least see some of the original cast and most of the people. And of course, you kind of have to stop yourself from like singing the songs out loud. You are allowed to sing with the king when he goes, "Everybody." We all do it, but like other than that, like, do not sing it out loud. It's embarrassing. I love the costume in Hamilton, so I was really paying attention while things are going on to like what colors they were wearing and what type of pattern they're using, because I like the 18th century clothing a lot. So I've been like kind of taking notes in my head, like, oh, that's a certain type of dress, and that's that color, like, and then try to scroll the notes away in my head while I'm watching. One thing too, if you ever get to see it live, like, do not try to take photos of it. Like, they're gonna like hound you like crazy. Like, don't bother. The most you can maybe get away with is like a picture of the set like before the thing starts, but like, do not try to take pictures during the show. Like, they're really, really, really militant about it. I'm like, also, to be honest, like, it's just better to soak it in your head,
right,
and try to like capture it live. But it's a really amazing experience. Like, it doesn't, even if you end up seeing like touring company live, like, or you end up seeing it on Broadway, like, it's just an experience to be had, because even if the original cast is no longer there, like, the actors that are coming into the roles they're really like dedicated to like keeping the vision of the story alive. Even they might be singing things a little differently, or like different notes are being hit, or like different emotions are being played with, but like, it's very interesting to see the way certain characters are being interpreted in the new version. Like just the different styles that are being used. And even just the differences in physicality. It's like, this is just really, really exciting experience. I think sometimes the fandom is a bit too what was I say? They're very sometimes they're a bit caught up on like original versus newer, and I'm just like, I feel like it's all one thing at this point, just different ways and styles. I mean, none of the like touring version or the current cast of Broadway, they're not really changing anything much. They're following the same guidelines. It's just slightly different styles. That's it.
yeah, because that reminds me of like when I got to see Riverdance 6 years ago, and finally, And I
Mm-hmm.
remember like in school, they would like whatever music class we were in, and we had a sub. They would show like a little bit of it, wherever much you could actually watch before we had to leave. And I always found it fascinating. And then seeing it in person was like, okay, yeah, it's a different cast. And then when I got the DVD and watched the DVD, I was like, oh yeah, that must be the original cast from like '97. Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
And there is something to say about seeing a show live versus watching a DVD or a TV version. So like Hamilton's on my list. It, I don't think it will be coming here anytime soon, but whenever they're traveling, probably the closest it will be to us might be Charlotte or DC.
DC is actually the DC tickets are online now, I think.
Okay, I'll have to check later. Okay.
Also be aware because I think they were DC is already announced, so I have a feeling they may be either sold out or really expensive. But the DC tickets are announced. Their dates are like sometime in June, I think, next year.
Okay.
Or might be confusing that with San Francisco, but I know I saw a link, so yeah.
I will.
Or coming soon thing, so yeah.
I would definitely look at that. But thanks for sharing your experience because I mean I wanted to ask you about it. I remember I saw your pictures and it's like I want to know because
I try not to like brag too much about seeing it because I also feel guilty as so many people have not been able to at all. Like the most they can do is slip a. It's like they enjoy the bootleg and that's it. I feel really guilty because even though I am lucky enough to have afforded it, it's just that there are a lot of people who can't or people who don't live in America. Because oddly enough, I didn't realize how international the fandom was until I started going into groups about it, and I was like, "Whoa, there are people in this group from Indonesia." That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot, and even within, I mean, also I feel like until Hamilton is filmed from start to finish in a legal fashion, I feel like there may be people who will never see it. One thing that I think was getting discussed was that they're thinking about letting high schools and colleges have it licensed.
Okay, interesting.
Which I find interesting. I have a feeling they may not do this right now because I feel like they can still make money from touring. But I feel like in a couple of years they may end up having like the licenses available for schools to like cast it. But I feel like that'd be a very hard production for a school who doesn't have a lot of money to pull off or a lot of talent because you need a lot of strong voices and a lot of people who can handle some of those lyrics. Those lyrics are tough for a performer.
Yeah,
like they're tough. I'm like, I don't see. I mean, unless it's a high school like superstar thing, like I don't see a lot of high school students being able to tackle that material. Even though, if I think about it, they're kind of already doing it themselves. Like, think about it. It's like,
you okay?
My own problem personally is this costuming because I feel like the costumes are very involved for high school production.
That's true. Yeah, from what I've seen, like it's very detail oriented. So
I'm like, it's like also because right now we're not at that point where they're running off. Because like with China, like those like costume companies, they can run off like a lot of like period looking stuff for very cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Hamilton stuff, like right now on Etsy, like if you want a Hamilton costume, you're gonna be paying at least like $300 to $500 for a Hamilton costume, and I'm like, I don't think that's realistic for a high school production to afford.
No, not at all. Yeah, you're right. And when we finish, I'll tell you something off the recording.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to thank you for coming on tonight and talking kind of.
Oh, no, you're welcome. Anytime, you just let me know availability and I'll find a time. Thank you.
This is a good wrap up to 2016. I think for entertainment things, this is a good wrap up. I know we've had a lot of things happen this year.
Oh yeah, oh Lord, so much.
That's another conversation in its own right. But did you have a good year overall?
I had once you take out the geopolitical stuff out of it, I had a pretty decent year. I mean, because I graduated, like, I feel like I graduated, I got a full-time job, and I feel like, you know, that stuff, being able to say, well, I finally have a direction. I'm not entirely sure the plan is going to work out, but at least I have something concrete now that I did not have 4 or 5 years ago when I got out of undergrad. Like, I kind of really didn't have any direction in my life. I didn't really know where I was going, didn't know what I was going to be doing. So I kind of took a gap year. Then I started out. I started in grad school. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know what I'd end up doing, and I figured out a path. So my current full-time job is not quite what I want to do, but it's a good starting point, and I'm meeting people, and hopefully that can turn into like moving up in the company. So it's in my field. I'm working for a media company, so I'm like, yay, that's great. I'm making full-time wages, so that's helpful, because bills need to get paid. So yeah, 2016, I think a lot of I noticed, like, I kind of blocked a lot of like what was going on. Not that I wasn't aware of what was going on politically, but like I tried to not let that affect me, because I was on this mission from before 2016 started, was to get my career and personal life in that sense in order. So like now that it is in order, at least it's at a point I'm at a point where I'm like, okay, I see where money's coming from, and I finished school, so I got that done. So that's why 2016 for me was a good year. I mean, there's also other stuff happening with family and friends and conventions and stuff, but like that 2016 for me was a very good year because of the fact that I did accomplish my goal I set out for it. Although I set out this goal like before 2016, but yeah. I couldn't predict what happened with the election. I couldn't predict all those celebrity deaths. I couldn't predict the other geopolitical happenings, but at least I felt like I had a handle on my own personal life, which I think was important.
And I think that's a lesson we all can learn from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think for me it was a good year, and this, having work and wasn't always consistent, but having work was good, and it's nice to know finally, what that feels like.
Mm-hmm.
So I can just hope overall, with, as we're almost 2017, so it's hope next year will be better, and just focus on our lives and just do what we have to do.
Yeah.
So I know people will want to talk to you afterwards, and about your cosplays and stuff. So where can they find you on Facebook and stuff?
Okay, on Facebook, the link I sent you to my cosplay page is Amanda Poldark Cosplay. That inbox is always open for just general chit chat and whatever. I'm also super active on Twitter. I use my real name somewhat shortened because it's too long for Twitter's requirements. It's Amanda R. Prescott, at Amanda R. Prescott on Twitter. On Tumblr, I don't really use it, but the inbox is open. It's Amanda Poldark, one word. You spell Poldark Poldark. That's where I am on social media. So Twitter and the cosplay page inbox is the best way to reach me. That won't get filtered into spam, because those inboxes are always open. I talking about things, advice, because I sew a lot, so I'm open for that.
Well, cool. And yeah, we finished. I'm gonna share some stuff with you. That's
okay.
Yeah, but thank you, and
you're welcome.
Everybody have a happy New Year and such. And
have a happy New Year, everybody, and hopefully we have a good 2017.